Sam Dykstra. Sam, welcome back to the program. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I got to tell you that, in the past, the spring breakout game, if you would have said A's Brewers from the A's side, no one would have been that excited. But when you start putting Leo De Vries and Gage Jump and Jamie Arnold and Wang Lynn and all the guys that we have, we're now pretty interesting. I think a lot of people are now going to be interested in that game. We know the Brewers have had a very strong farm system for a long time now, for a while too.
Yeah, I'm really hopeful that the Brewers actually have two breakout games. So we'll see how many of their guys they send to face the A's. But I'm hopeful that we'll get Jesus Made and Leo De Vries on the same field. Those guys signed in the same international class. They're two of the best teenage prospects in the game. They're number 3 and number 4 on our top 100. Getting that matchup might be one of the best we see in all of spring breakout.
Yeah, Leo De Vries, our first time getting to see him, and you see him walking around, and you see the confidence, and you see him play. I'm telling you, Sam, this kid does not look 19. He doesn't act 19. Doesn't look 19. When Martin Gallegos from MLB.com, who's our main beat guy, goes down, he goes, when you talk to him, he doesn't see 19. I mean, and we got to see it against the Padres the other day. Going against his former team was a big deal for him, getting a couple hits. Talk to us about Leo. This kid seems really special.
Yeah, you mentioned Martin Martorio, in which Mark Kotze was quoted about how much aura and swag Leo De Vries has just by way of being a top prospect, but he's backing it up on the field too. It was really interesting to see him come around last year at Double-A Midland after the trade, especially in the postseason in the Texas League playoffs. I think he had 3 homers in 5 games there. It's always been a really well-rounded package for Leo De Vries since he signed with the Padres. Some questions about whether he's going to remain at shortstop long-term, but I think the bat's going to play, the power's going to play. He can contribute in multiple different ways. And obviously at 19 years old, he's far from a finished product. So if he's doing this at Double-A already, I think even by the time he makes the majors, wherever position that may be, there's still going to be some development left for him, and he could take off in year 2, in year 3 in ways we saw guys like maybe a Bobby Witt Jr. did, right? Like he struggled out of the gate a little bit as a rookie, and now he's an all-world shortstop. I'm not going to put De Vries on that same level just yet, but given the power, given what he can do as a hitter, I think he could get to a point where he's an all-star infielder at some point for the A's.
So watching him play, he's very fluid as an athlete. He's got good rhythm. He's got good feet. He's got good lateral. We've seen almost every play. We've seen the hops. Why would we hear people say, I don't know if he's going to play short. He's going to play somewhere. When you watch him play short, we're finding out, he played some basketball. He was a point guard. Why are people not so sold on him as just saying, yep, he's a shortstop?
Yeah, it's been interesting for me too, because I heard that point guard comp and that history, because I do the Padres top 30 for us at MLB Pipeline and writing about him as an international.
So you're all in on this. You've been studying this.
I mean, listen, I wish I could write him up as part of the Padres system because it's not a very deep system anymore. So having somebody exciting like Leo De Vries at the top would certainly make that group a lot more fun to write as a writer. But I hear it. I know there are some scouts who don't think he moves as well laterally as you would hope. Like maybe he ends up being more of a second baseman, depending on how much you like the arm. Maybe he ends up sliding to third base. And a lot of this is projection too, right? Like he's somebody who isn't a plus runner necessarily. So he's probably going to slow down by the time he's in his early 20s, mid 20s. And at that point, if he's just above average now, is he average run at that point? And then the range takes an even bigger hit. I've seen him okay at short. I know the Padres liked him enough at short. You could certainly run him out there. It'll be an interesting conversation. Hopefully, maybe even as early as the second half of this year of like, who do you start at shortstop, him or Jacob Wilson? But you want those options, right? And maybe De Vries is just the easier one to move over out of those two.
Yeah, I think Jacob Wilson is the long-term answer, obviously. I just wanted to, why do people – look at him play short. I've watched him the last couple of days. Yeah, he can play shortstop. It's not a problem. It's just that whole I don't know where he's going to play. Well, that's a great thing about having. It's why we all draft so many shortstops. Max Muncy, chance to start at third base for us this year, was drafted at shortstop. You draft shortstops because they're the best athletes, and you figure you can put them anywhere. after that. Gage Jump is a guy that is going to pitch in Sacramento at some point this year. When you start talking about the breakouts, it's almost like he's already broken out and it's ready for him to almost graduate from that. But he'll probably pitch in this game, hopefully against the Brewers on March 22nd. But Gage Jump, this is special out of LSU. This is a special left-handed arm.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite guys to watch in the minors just because there's a certain energy to watching him pitch. The way he drops and drives is really interesting and accelerates moving forward down the mound. The fact that he's already been touching 98.4 this spring. I mean, he was somebody who's averaging he was averaging 96.4 this spring, but that was up from 94.6. And he's somebody who already added velo from where he was in college. I'm not going to get too wrapped up in spring training velocity. He's got to hold it obviously into the summer and hopefully into August, September, and maybe even October. But for now, the fact that he's doing this is certainly encouraging. He's been working with a slider and changeup only in spring training. But I just think with that deceptive look, he can get batters out with that mix and be really special. And obviously the results were there last year at AA Midland. It is a jump to AAA. The Pacific Coast League is going to reveal some things and see how it works, especially with the move to the Major League ball. How does this stuff play there? But the fact that the velo is ticking up even more so far this spring, it continues to be an up arrow next to Gage Jump's name.
Well, I got to tell you one guy that it was so funny when we were the winter meetings and we were with Billy Owens, who does a great job for us. He's been with us for a long, long time, and he's our assistant general manager. And Wang Lynn, he called the Taiwanese Blake Snell. And we're like, wow, that's an interesting comp, but just ferocious competitor. Maybe that's not really Blake Snell, but Blake Snell's got great stuff. But this guy's like a tough Blake Snell. We can't kind of wait to see him unleash because we hear about the stuff, but the thing that's so interesting, like Dave Stewart, A's legend, A's Hall of Famer, talked to us about is like, this guy's mean. this guy's like, like you don't think of players coming from Asia as being mean, but when you start to realize how cutthroat Ichiro was, we now, Shohei Ohtani's no joke. He's a tough guy. Like we're starting to see these Asian players who come over, and Wang Lynn, I can't wait to see him. What do you got on the Taiwanese Blake Snell?
Yeah, that is a new comp for me. I will say I have not heard that one. I will say this: I think he has more control than Blake Snell does. Blake Snell is somebody who's working with command, right? He's trying to get you to expand the zone. I think Wang Lynn can work in the zone more. That doesn't mean he's better. The stuff has to be better than that. The interesting thing for him is he's somebody whose velocity tailed off a little bit last year. Now, from what we've written for MLB Pipeline, the A's are hopeful that they can get him sitting back in the mid-90s. He's only topped out at 95 so far this spring, so that's going to need watching. Maybe he's building up to it. We'll see how that goes. But the interesting pitch for me is his Vulcan changeup because he's got a slider and a curveball that have already gotten whiffs in Cactus League games. But it's a Vulcan changeup that he's taken on. It seems to work for him. It's something I heard a few years ago from Jonah Tong in the New York Mets system. When he was just fiddling around with grips, he finally found something that worked. Why is this something that works for Lynn? It seems he's thrown it the second most of any pitch type so far in the Cactus League. How much more confident does he get with it, as he moves to the upper minors? We'll see from there. But the pitch mix is certainly there. He's got multiple offerings to work with.
All right, you are going to be put in the shoes of David Force, the general manager of the Athletics. You've gone through 2 years of getting Jacob Wilson right to the big leagues. You got Nick Kurtz right to the big leagues. So Sam Dykstra, you are no longer Sam Dykstra. You are David Force. You drafted this kid out of Florida State, Jamie Arnold. He's got wicked stuff. He hides the ball well. We saw him yesterday against the Angels. He's a slinger who also is a short armor. Now I really understand why he hides the ball so well. If he starts dominating early in the minor leagues, David Force, Sam Dykstra, how hard is it going to be for you not to promote him to the big leagues this year?
Yeah, that's going to be a very interesting conversation because I think some of the guys they've pushed so far, right, are hitters. And pitchers are a different story. They're working with different pitch counts and workloads and innings counts and all that kind of stuff. I think he's probably going to start out the year at AA Midland. I haven't heard that from anybody, but I that would be my guess. The interesting thing for me with Arnold is, and this is something that's Martinez written about, and I've seen out and about, is that he's working with a bunch of different pitch types. Like he's trying to add a sinker, he's trying to add a cutter, he's working with a kick changeup, all these pitches that he's not satisfied with his mix as it is, given what he showed at Florida State. He's willing to continue to tinker, which is great for his future. That's exactly what spring training should be. That's exactly what you should do in your first full off season. But if he's tinkering still, have we seen his final form, or are you going to continue to allow him to find a mix that works for him first in the Texas League and then in the PCL? I think that's going to be interesting here moving forward, because like you said, the way he's deceptive, the way it works. I mean, Chris Sale is the comp we hear all the time, right? Of that whippy arm is Chris Sale. Like, he's got really good extension, so that fastball is going to get right on top of batters too. I think I would look at it at the All-Star break, right? Is the pitch mix working? Has he found something that he really likes? Is he still tinkering? And then you evaluate from there. I think there's a chance he comes up later in the year. I just don't think this is going to be a Nick Kurtz situation.
It's not Nick Kurtz 2.0.
It's tough to say anybody would be Nick Kurtz 2.0, right? Like that was just such an all-time rookie season. To expect that out of anybody else would be too high of expectations. Arnold is somebody who had less consistent results, going into his draft year. That's how he was available at 11th overall. I think he just needs everything ironed out in a way that Nick Kurtz just needed to be Nick Kurtz.
Yeah, there's been a couple people around here that they want to hedge their bet, and they go, well, it's the second year for Nick Kurtz. And I just look at him and go, Nick Kurtz is not going to struggle, man. This is a different dude. This is a guy who's going to have a long career, and he's going to have some crazy numbers. And where that leads to, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but this guy's kind of special. When we're talking about the prospects, I love this game. I love even more what we're talking about next year. We have no idea what spring training is going to look like next year, but why not showcase these guys? I love when you put the bright lights on the young players to get them more experience, more seasoning. Talk us through that. Every team will have their prospects, and we're going to play a tournament, and here we go. I love this idea that they're floating for next year.
Yeah, I mean, since Spring Breakout first debuted, right, in 2024, it's been an exhibition series, and it will be this spring too. But becoming in 2027 and 2028, it's going to go to a tournament-style format. So teams in a bracket, it's something you can follow along with at home. All the details are still being ironed out, but at least people can get excited knowing that this is going to look a little different next year. It's not just for bragging rights, right? You're not going to have like the White Sox and Dodgers doing the Battle of Camelback Ranch in Glendale, and just so they can talk about it on the backfields. It's who's actually going to advance and go on from there. I think that's going to add another layer to this. I think fans have been excited from what they've seen in Spring Breakout so far, with highlights like Paul Skeens striking out Jackson Holliday and Roman Anthony homering while people are chanting overrated at him last spring. It's just going to add more highlights to this. And I think that gets people even more bought in and even more excited for it year in and year out.
Were you in Peoria yesterday for that epic battle of Padres Mariners?
I wasn't. I am actually headed down to Arizona this weekend. I'm going to be down there for all next week and then flying to Florida from there. But seeing some of those football scores that were going on, I was wondering what the wind was in the west side of the valley. That was a little bit insane.
Our game was terrible. It was 16-11. It was 3 hours and 45 minutes against the Angels. And just as we were feeling bad for ourselves, we were tipped off that the score at the time was 26-4. I believe the Padres were leading the Mariners, or whoever was leading who, but it was 26-4. And I was like, you know what? Maybe our game isn't that bad.
Yeah, I don't know what was up in the Arizona wind yesterday. I know part of it was, I think the Mariners were putting like their big arms out there, so that's likely affecting things too. But yeah, it seemed like a heck of a day in Arizona.
I want to ask you before we let you go, because obviously you do the Padres prospects, and a lot has been made about, and we've been kind of educating people on this because, when our old skipper, Bob Melvin, left and went to the Padres, I've known Bob real well. I got kind of tipped off about, this is kind of a house of cards long term. And now we're seeing it where the Seidler brothers, Peter Seidler, unfortunately passed away, tried to win so bad in San Diego, leveraged a lot. brothers end up getting the team. They realize this is not sustainable. So now the team is up for sale right now. So we'll see who is going to take over the ownership of the Padres. They don't have a television deal. They've got a lot of money that they're going to be spending. AJ Preller, AJ Preller is kind of like I want to say, a crazy Billy Beane. Billy Beane back in the day was a riverboat gambler. He would trade. And it's one of the reasons why Billy Beane kind of moved on. He became a vice president. And now he just really advises David Force. It wasn't fun for Billy Beane anymore because no one wants to make deals. No one wants, back in the day, everybody I grew up in San Diego. We had a guy by the name of Jack McKeon when I was growing up. His name was Trader Jack is what they called him. It's like things have changed. We value prospects so much and we don't want to give prospects up and we hold on to them like they're gold. Well, AJ Preller is kind of like the last of the Mohicans, whether he wins or not. AJ Preller now with a contract extension. Sam, wouldn't you say, whether you like what he does or not, AJ Preller is good for us because at least somebody still is willing to go out there and make some moves and keep something interesting at the trading deadline. And thank God he gave us the A's, Leo De Vries.
Yeah, keeping it interesting is one way of putting it. As somebody, at MLB Pipeline, when a trade happens, we are not instantly, but within an hour or two, updating our prospect list. We're always keeping on top of it. So I think I had to do at least 10 Padres replacements last year. Before I even got into the office, Leo De Vries had been traded. I was following along on my cell phone on the New York City subway. And AJ Preller, listen, I think part of this comes from the fact that he really trusts his scouts through the draft. He really trusts the development team. If you look at it now, there may not be a lot of talent there, but you look at Miguel Mendez, who's their number 3 prospect. He wasn't on the top 30 a year ago. They do a good job of internal development and getting the most out of their players. And sometimes that means they ship them off for major league talents. That's part of what a farm system is for. It sounds a little weird to say it's not just for graduating major leaguers, but it's like to get guys good enough that they are wanted by other teams in trades. And you can go out and get an all-world reliever in Mason Miller. Like that's difficult to pull off. Not many teams had a Leo De Vries to trade. The Padres did, to their credit. They went out and signed him internationally and developed him enough to be, a top 5 MLB prospect. And then they go out and get one of the best relievers in the world. So credit to them for doing that. I appreciate that he keeps it interesting. I wish he made it a little easier on me for updating the top 30, but that's a small price for him constantly keeping that trade machine moving.
Hey, but I got to ask you this before I let you go because we got the other guys. So we're going to play. I think we're playing Braden Nett today, who we interviewed down here at spring training, who we could see at some point start games for us. And then Henry Baez, who also came over, talk to us about how you evaluate. Since you did the Padres evaluations, tell us about Nett. Tell us about Baez, who we also got with Leo.
Yeah, Braden Nett, somebody who I thought last year the Padres might have gotten super aggressive with, because that's the other thing that they do, right, is that they push their guys really quickly. Once you make it to Double-A, you're basically an option for them to call you up at any time. The fact that he's been touching 97.9 this spring is interesting to me. So the velo is clearly there. He's got a kick change and a curveball in there too. I think he kind of gets overlooked from that Mason Miller trade, just because Leo De Vries is such a golden cow and like the big deal from that. But like Braden Nett could end up being like a number 4, number 5 starter. He was one of the best in the San Diego system. He's now one of the best in the A system. And one other one I'll just throw out there. I know you mentioned Baez, but one I'm interested in, especially for this breakout game, is Eduardo Nunez, who's somebody who has touched triple digits in the past. He's only touched 97 this spring, but I think there's more in the tank there. The slider gets plus grades. It's velo up in the upper 80s to make that a wicked hard pitch. He could be a fun 1-inning option for the A's. I'm not saying he's going to be a 1-for-1 replacement for Mason Miller, but he's got the velo to be maybe a high leverage arm if he can find enough control. That's a pretty good part of that return too.
Hey, always appreciate the time. You guys, thank you for what you do. You guys do a great job covering all of our players and keeping us up to date on what's going on with the minor league guys. I know you're coming down here. Enjoy yourself in Arizona. We'll talk to you during the season. Once again, we always appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.